Hi everybody, thanks for coming to this webinar titled How Dynamics Partner Can Save Time and Money Using Cloud Server for Migrations. I'm your host, Guillaume Boisvert, Product Director here at SherWeb. Happy to be here again with you today. Today, a bit of a special webinar where we'll spend most of the time, it's a short half hour, we'll spend with one of our partner from a company called Vendere, who are specialists in CRM. We'll have a very special guest called Anthony, who works for Vendere and is going to go into some details about one of his projects, migration projects for CRM that he did using the SherWeb Performance Cloud servers. Quickly, what we'll go through today, we'll give you a little bit of information about who is SherWeb. Maybe not spend a ton of time on that because I think most of you are familiar with SherWeb already. Talk to you about a little bit about what is Performance Cloud. We'll have Anthony explain his own experience with Performance Cloud, using it with CRM in a migration project. Then we'll come back to a little bit what makes Performance Cloud unique. Then we'll take some time for your questions. It's important, if you have any questions, please put them in the webinar software. There is a space dedicated for that for questions. Always happy to get questions. That's what makes the best webinar possible. The idea, we're all here to give you as much value as possible, to make the best use of your time. So if you have questions, don't hesitate. I'm always happy to answer them. Anthony will answer some questions as well if you have them. As you can see on the screen now, who is SherWeb? I think you're all familiar. Born in the cloud in 1998. We've been around a long time. We now have over 5,000 active partners, 40,000 client organization. Very focused on driving value to our clients. We have data centers in the US and Canada. Over 300 people now work at SherWeb. We've won numerous prizes and everything. I don't want to bore you with all of that, but know that SherWeb has been around a long time and we work hard at what we do. Moving right along, give you a little bit of an introduction of what it is when we're talking about Performance Cloud. So basically, Performance Cloud is what you would call infrastructure as a service. Infrastructure as a service is a platform of shared physical hardware there to give access to virtual resources to users. It has all the characteristics of the infrastructure as a service platform. You may know some of our competitors, people like Azure, people like AWS. We offer cloud servers, virtual networking, self-managed backup, and cloud databases, or database as a service. It offers you all of the advantages of the cloud. Actually, there's a bit of a mistake in that slide. It's pay-as-you-go. It's hourly billing, not daily billing. So basically, we look at what you're consuming at every moment and charge you only for that. You'll see that comes in very handy for projects like the one that we'll be talking about today with Anthony. Easy self-provisioning. You have access to a control panel. You can do all that on your own. True elasticity if you want to change configurations. We support both Windows and Linux. We'll be covering more the Windows use case today, but know that Linux works really well on the Performance Cloud. We have a financially backed 99.999% SLA, which basically means that if we're down for more than 26 seconds in a month, we have to reimburse you a part of your fee. It mostly means that we've built in redundancy, that we make sure that our products stay up, which I think is the part that's more relevant to everybody. There's also API access, so if you want to code against our platform, you can do it to automate function. Some of the advantages or contrast between on-premise server and cloud servers are there. So although you do get full control in both cases, there is no upfront costs, no single point of failure, and very high performance, scalability, and security in the cloud. I won't spend too much time on that. I'll go more the practical aspects. So what do people use our infrastructure as a service for? Well, on-premise server replacement, I think, would be the use case number one. Capacity extension is a very common one. If people have infrastructure they want to keep, physical infrastructure, they may be looking for some extension to that capacity, and the cloud makes a lot of sense there. We got a lot of clients for terminal service remote desktop installations, a lot of line of business software such as QuickBooks, hosting web services, hosting databases, backup and recovery is a common one as well. And then the grandfather of all use case for cloud, agile development and testing. So we're all here to talk about a bit of a more practical use case for people that are CRM consultant. I think this would apply to a lot of vertical software. This is something that could be repeated in different categories, if you will. but we'll talk about CRM today in a very practical, specific case. So let's bring on Anthony from Vendere. Hi, Anthony.
Hi, how's it going?
Very good. How are you today?
I'm doing exceptionally well. Happy to be here, and I think we're going to have a lovely chat for the next few minutes.
So we're very happy to have you. It's very nice when we can get partners on our webinar. I think it gives a much more realistic demonstration of what you can do with the products and how they can help you with your business. So I will flip the slides for you. If you can give us a sense of what the case that we're talking about today was, some of the sense of the challenges that you had, and then we'll get into obviously the solution.
Fantastic. Well, thanks a lot. Good day, everyone. So my name is Anthony, and I'm working as CEO at Vendere. We're a CRM partner, and I've personally been involved in CRM since the outgoing of the product. So I actually got certified on the beta 1 of the product. As the population using Dynamics CRM increased, we're getting more and more into the problem of migrating old customers to newer platforms. So we still have some people with some V4 version of the CRM or 2011 or 2013, and we need to migrate to the 2016 environment. Here I'll talk specifically of a customer we did a couple of months back. That is an on-premise customer. So it's somebody who has the installation on site in his facilities and who are currently using 2011 and wanted to migrate to 2016. Now, for those who are CRM consultants out there, and I know there's quite a few of you from what I understood from SherWeb, you all know that migrating from 2011 to 2016 forces us to go through a migration process, migrating the database from 2011 to 2013 to 2015, and finally get to our endpoint of 2016. So that implies, especially if you need to keep your current 2011 environment running, that you need to install a server for 2013, a server for 2015, and a server for 2016, especially if you want to be able to redo and relaunch your migration process and do any kind of corrections that may require. Now, in the current case that we're talking about, the customer wanted to continue running his 2011 because he wanted us to do some test migration in 2016. He also wanted to correct the UI and make some UI adjustments. As you all know, the user interface from Dynamics CRM changed quite a lot from the 2011 version with the menus on the left to the subsequent versions where we were much more full screen with the associated menus being on top. So of course the customer wanted to benefit from that, from the new UI space, from the new real estate space, add more grids and whatnot, and he wanted to do that, be able to test it before actually turning on the switch and migrating to the 2016 and going to production. So that's a use case a lot of you I'm sure out there have, and it's something that's very, very current in the market today. So need to go to that new environment and of course do some QA. And like most customers, they don't have a lot of hardware in place to do that migration, and they don't have a lot of excess capacity to be able to do that kind of processing. And of course, cost is always an issue in all those projects, so we want to try to minimize costs. And of course, also minimize setup time, whether you're billed by the hour, so the customer is going to put you a pressure of doing it as fast as possible. And if you're doing it on a fixed fee basis, which was our case, you're trying to get the most margins possible by doing it in the shortest amount of time versus what you quoted to the customer. So that was the challenge, the problem that we had. Yes,
Anthony, would you say it's fair to say that not only do they not have the common, like your common encounter, they don't have spare hardware to do the other servers, but even the hardware that they have to run that's let's say 2011 instance is usually pretty dated and already pretty archaic.
Yes, definitely, and there's two other things that comes into play. You're going to ask them to put in place a 2016 environment, right? So their IT guy is usually more focused in putting the new 2016 environment for when we do go live. And also to those companies, most companies don't have not only spare hardware, but spare time from their IT department. There's so many different projects going on for those companies that they're trying to allocate their own internal resources to the most important things. So I totally agree with you. We could have all the infrastructure, but also the question becomes availability of both resources from a human perspective to a technical perspective.
Great.
So let's move on. So the setup. So what did we need to set up? So from the bottom right, bottom left. Sorry, I don't know my right from my left here. So from the bottom left, of course, we need to start with that 2011 database, and of course, we wanted to do that, like I said, first in a kind of test mode to make sure everything worked. We needed to install our 3 environments that we're going to actually do the migration on, so 13, 15, and 16. And what we decided to do, since we didn't have excess licenses for SQL either, we installed both a demo version of the 2013 CRM, so I think the demo version was good for 90 days, and same for the SQL. So we were able to do that on all 3 servers and do that kind of installation. And for the Dynamics folks out there, you all know that in order for a Dynamics environment to work, you need an Active Directory server. So in all, we needed 4 virtual machines to get this project running. The other point that we also wanted to do is have a shared data space. As you know, those databases are pretty large. So if we take the case of this particular customer, his database was, I don't remember the exact size, but it was in the proximity of 50 to 100 gigs. So to start moving those data from each different server can be quite lengthy and basically takes a lot of time for nothing. So we wanted to be able to have a shared data space environment where we could easily move the data from one environment to the other, so that at the end we could have a final 2016 database that people are happy with, they tested, and we ran that into test first, that are changes, and you'll see the whole steps that we did before. And when we ran the final, we just took that final 2016 database, we reinstalled it into the final production environment that the customer had to be able to run. So we'll go into more detail about that, but that was the setup that we wanted, that we were looking for, and that we put in place in the cloud using SherWeb's infrastructure. So if you want to move, and anybody out there, feel free. I believe there's a way to ask questions directly from the panel there that you have, your GoToMeeting panel. So if you have any questions, please feel free. More than happy to answer, whether they're more environmental, specific to SherWeb, or even technical.
Yeah, between me and Anthony, we'll be able to answer pretty much any question you may have.
Good. So moving on, so what we needed to do, the first thing we need to do is set up the environment. So of course we have 4 new machines, we need to set them up, okay? And that implies getting the machines up and ready. And the nice thing about that is all the provisioning of those machines is done by just clicking a mouse through the different admin panels of the infrastructure offered by SherWeb. And then, of course, we need to install the Dynamics software and the SQL software on every machine. So the faster those machines are, the better it is. Then, of course, receiving, you all know the procedure, so receiving a 2011 backup, restored in the 2013 environment, you then start the imports. Before doing that, of course, there's a gambit of little tools that you could run on the 2011 environment, just to make sure that from a compatibility point of view, there's no JavaScript or callouts for those that are very old in CRM and still knows the version 4 how it was used. Callouts that were in that old environment that would impede the migration process. So basically, you could run those little software just to make sure there's nothing wrong with your environment that you're migrating. Restoring the 2013 environment and then do an import, and that basically gave you a 2013 environment. At that point, what we did is we basically did some cleanup, because that customer had some old components in there that he did not want into this 2016 environment. And since we did not want to put in place another 2011 environment, we basically decided to remove those components once we were in 2013. Once that was done, we basically restarted the process twice. So backup of 2013, restoring 2015 with an import that migrated to 2015, and last from 2015 to 2016. At that point, we had a 2016 environment where we did all the UI changes. So the customer was there, was with us. We did the UI changes where it was happy. We changed the screens around. We changed the grids around, added even a couple of new fields, and basically kept all those changes in a solution. So we kept that solution, kept it very handy. And for those who know Dynamics 216, you know that the solutions now, you're very, very much more able to pick and choose exactly what you want. So we were able to pick and choose exactly what we want to keep. And that was done. And that was done in a period, I would say, of about 2 months, ranging 2.5 months from the time we did the initial setups, we did the restore, and then the user did his tests and the different UI changes. Then came D-Day. We basically restarted that whole process. We switched off the 2011 server. We basically did the whole migration again. We then applied the UI changes that we had done to the latest 2016 environments restored. And voila, we had a 2016 environment ready to back up, send to their production servers, and ready to be used. So that basically what we did. The good point about it, and we'll check that in the next slide, is all the advantage that we had using the SherWeb environment. So maybe if you want to move to the next slide, or if you have a question. So let's move on to the next slide.
Yep.
So the advantages that we have basically for using the SherWeb environment, first of all, was the easy setup. The provisioning of the machines was extremely fast, and the setup that we had to do of the machine of configuring our Active Directory, configuring the shared disk space, was basically, like I said, just clicking the mouse and answering a few questions. So that went extremely well. The other issue was a cost issue. As you know, as we migrate from 2013 to 15 to 16, once we're on 2016, I don't need those 2 servers anymore until I do my final migration. So I don't want to pay for them. Okay? So basically, we shut them down. They're all configured, they're all nice, they're all ready to go. As long as you don't spread your project more than 90 days, your license, your demo license is still valid and still good. So we did our first migration, shut them down, and reinitiated them only the time that we had to do our final migration to go to production. Like I said, the shared disk space, extremely easy to move the database, no delay in moving your backup that you did from 2013 to be ready to import into 2015 environment, and same from 2015 to 2016. So extremely fast, you don't waste any time. And I know some people are going to say over there, well, Anthony, you're not actually wasting time. You start your backup, you go do something else, and then you come back 30 minutes later and everything is done. True, but that makes you do some switching from one project to another. And anytime that you switch from one project to another, you could forget things, do some errors, and there's also an overhead of you trying to get back to what your project you were actually doing. So the more you could avoid that, the better it is. Also, once everything was on 2016, it was easy for us to grant access to that environment to our external users, to our customer, so that they could basically do their tests and tell us what they want in terms of customization of the UI. And the processing of the machine itself was extremely fast. Now, as you know, doing a migration of CRM, the number one issue is going to be the speed of your CPU, and the number two is going to be how much RAM you could allocate to the machine. And that was also nice because we could basically adjust the amount of size that we needed for that machine. In this case, all of our machines were 8 gig of memory, which was very sufficient to do most of the processing in about half an hour to an hour, migrating from one environment to the other. So time to execute, which is also something very interesting, to do the whole setup. So to set up the 4 machines, the 2013, 15, 16, and the 80 machine, and provisioning them, getting the software installed for both Dynamics CRM and for SQL, took less than a day. In fact, I think it took anywhere between 5 and 6 hours. So it was extremely fast. And of course, you could switch from one machine to the other. You don't need to wait for the first one to finish before you start the second one. So as long as you got your Active Directory set up first, you could basically do all these 3 others in parallel. And then when we came time to the processing itself, once again, to go through the whole 3 environment was less than a day. The machines are extremely fast. Like I said, the allocation of memory could be done to have more memory than we usually have. So that goes extremely well and extremely rapid. So that was something that we found extremely interesting for us, and definitely saved us a lot of time and a lot of money to be able to do that job. So that's what we did. And like I said, I'm more than happy to entertain any questions that there may be in terms of how we did this and the advantages of using a the virtual machines offered by SherWeb.
Thanks, Anthony.
Oh,
So
I see there's a question. Wow.
So I'll deal with the question. One thing of note from what you said is that the combination of the try licenses and the on-demand server for the 2013-2015 is really what makes it a cost-effective migration, because you didn't have to buy license and you really didn't have to buy server. You just pay for them for the few hours that you need them, really.
Definitely. So basically, out of 4 servers, there's 2 that we basically only use for 2 days. Okay, the 2013 to 2015. The only one that stayed up was the AD server, which needed to stay up, and our 2016 environment, because the user was doing some tests, the customer was doing some tests and asking us or doing himself some UI changes. So basically, we're not paying for 4 servers, we're only paying for 2. And the Active Directory server was a much less scaled up server. It was an entry-level server, so the cost of that machine was extremely low because we didn't need a lot of processing.
Okay. So one of the questions that we got was, can the demo environment be converted to live? Which I think you cover in a sense that you did the transfer once to test and to show the client and do all your development, and then basically you just redid the importation of data to make sure that it's up to date, reapplied your solution. Is that correct? But basically, you kept the same environment. You didn't have to set it up twice.
Definitely. Okay. So yes, it's able to be moved live, but let's make sure, because there's some very good CRM people here, live on premise. Okay, we were not migrating from a on-premise environment to an Office 365 cloud environment, right? So right. On-premise to on-premise. So definitely it was moved to live. We took the final backup, like you said, and we just basically put it in the new production environment. Correct.
Okay, thank you. Yeah. So Anthony talked a lot about what the flexibility and performance brought to his project, and I'm going to spend the last few minutes just to cover the different aspects of Performance Cloud that make it sort of stand out from competitors in that aspect, because I mentioned it, and we're not kidding ourselves. We know other cloud service providers, but here's what sort of makes the SherWeb Performance Cloud stand out for those kinds of projects. So he talked about the performance a lot, and it's in the name. I mean, we better have the performance because we put it in the name. What we did is basically we chose components that were all geared toward that performance. A lot of people that are building infrastructure as a service will go for the high density but very low performance. So, for example, when we're talking about the CPUs that are used for most clouds, they're very low speed but a lot of cores. In our cases, we wanted to make sure that even any server that you set up on the SherWeb Performance Cloud had high performance, even if it has reasonable specs. So we went for the higher frequency CPU. We went for very fast storage as well. Storage has been cited as the biggest bottleneck for most of those things. And Anthony mentioned the transfer of data between the different versions was very fast. And the reason for that is that all of our storage is SSD. So there is no traditional hard drive used. We do offer it as an option, but everything by default is on SSD, on flash storage, and that makes a huge difference when it comes to import, exports, and those kind of processes. Same for network speed between virtual machines and all of that. To give you a sense, because it's easy to say, but it's harder to prove, we went to a third-party company called Cloud Spectator that does evaluation of infrastructure as a service as far as performance. And we had them do a price-performance comparison because, well, performance is always nice. This is a bit of a more well-rounded approach that includes price in the factors. And they compared us to different configuration at AWS, different configuration at Azure, and different configuration at SherWeb. And you could see that for CPU speed, memory speed, storage, 2 types of storage, and as well as internal network, we came out on top as far as value of that price and performance ratio in most tests. We have a 40-page document that explains in detail how the tests were done, the whole methodology, and give you all the results. I didn't want to bore you with 40-page results today. That was completely outside of the scope. So basically, that's what we wanted to talk to you about today, is the combination of Performance Cloud and CRM migration. I want to thank Anthony for being here today. If you have any questions, additional questions for us, we're running out of time right now. But if you have any additional questions, don't hesitate. You can contact Anthony. He was nice enough to put all of his contact information. If you have any questions about CRM migration, if you have any projects that you're looking at, or if you want to just exchange idea with somebody that does similar work, all of his contact information is here. He's a very nice guy. He was very nice to come here today on this webinar and share some of his time and experience with us. If you have any question about our product, be it in Performance Cloud, be them Dynamics 365, Office 365, please contact your account manager. You should have his direct information. If you don't, the phone number is right here on this slide. Anthony, I want to thank you again for being here today and taking the time.
My pleasure. Thank you very much for inviting me.
And I want to thank everybody that was here today to join us for the webinar. Have a nice day.
Thank you. Bye-bye.